Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to EduTech 2020, organized by Internet and Mobile Association of India. It is with immense pleasure that I would like to let all of you know that our conference today has received an amazing response with over 1,200 delegates attending our sessions throughout the day. On that exciting note, I would like to bring to you our next session, which is a very special vision note, and for which we are very fortunate to have some eminent Indian leaders with us to share their knowledge in relation to Indian education policy in these current times. We would like to welcome our guests, Dr. Sudhanshu Trivedi, Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, Uttar Pradesh BJP, Shri Sujit Kumar, Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, Odisha BJD, Professor Rajiv Gowda, former Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, and ex-IIM Bangalore professor, Shri Ghanshyam Tiwari, Member Samajwadi Party, founder Good at Technologies. Welcome to all of you. With that, I would like to welcome our first guest, Dr. Sudhanshu Trivedi, MP and national spokesperson of BJP. He holds a PhD in mechanical engineering, has served as advisor to Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh and Home Minister of India. He's a scholar in political science, Hindi, Sanskrit, and statecraft. We welcome you, sir. I would request you to please address the audience on the vision note. Thank you.
Namaskar, respected Professor Rajiv Gowda ji, Sujit Kumar ji, my dear friend Ghanshyam Tiwari ji, and all other respected members who are present in this meeting. देखिए, शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में जहाँ तक मेरा व्यक्तिगत रुचि है तो मुझे भी 3 यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में पढ़ाने का मौका मिला, तो शिक्षा से थोड़ा मेरा पर्सनल लगाव भी रहा है। और मेरे मदर और फादर दोनों कॉलेज में लेक्चरर थे, तो जिसकी वजह से एजुकेशन से थोड़ा मेरा बचपन से भी बहुत जुड़ाव रहा। अब अगर इंडिया की एजुकेशन पॉलिसी को देखें, इफ यू लुक एट द इंडियाज एजुकेशन पॉलिसी, आफ्टर इंडिपेंडेंस several efforts were made several times to introduce, or you can say reshape, the education policy. Last time it was done in 1986 when Sri Rajiv Gandhi ji was Prime Minister. Now, if you look at the span of last 34 years, the world has changed a lot. India has changed a lot, and India's position in 1986 cannot be compared with what is today in 2020. So accordingly, the education policy was needed to be reshaped, reorganized as per the present day need. अगर आप एजुकेशन की पॉलिसी को देखें तो there are two fundamental problems. One was at the basic elementary level. At the pre-primary and primary level, if you look, normally the children uses to have a little bit of fear going to school because they think that the atmosphere in the school is not that much conducive or play oriented or oriented towards their various activities which was required in the childhood. दूसरा, एकदम आप एक्सट्रीम पे चले जाइए एट द लेवल ऑफ पीएचडी एंड रिसर्च. व्हाट हैपेंस अगर आप पूरी दुनिया के बड़े बड़े कंट्रीज को देखें तो एट द लेवल ऑफ रिसर्च देयर इज ए स्ट्रॉन्ग फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी अवेलेबल if you want to switch over from one discipline to another discipline. But unfortunately, it was not in India. Moreover, the research needs a lot of backup both by resources and money. There was no that much structured setup available to back the research. तो बस आप ये समझिए कि जो शिक्षा व्यवस्था है उसके दो मूलभूत आधार हैं. एक तो है बिल्कुल प्राइमरी शिक्षा जो हर बच्चे को मिलनी चाहिए. तो इस न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में एक फंडामेंटल चेंज किया गया कि जो पहले क्लास 3 तक की जो शिक्षा होगी वो शिक्षा ऐसी होगी जिसमें आंगनबाड़ी और अन्य को भी आपस में मिला दिया है. दैट विल बी मोर अ प्ले ओरिएंटेड सोसाइटी, प्ले ओरिएंटेड पॉलिसी, जिससे बच्चों को स्कूल जाने में जो एक फियर जैसा महसूस होता है, रादर देन यू कैन से डिसइंचेंटमेंट रहता है, छुट्टी हो जाए तो उन्हें ज्यादा अच्छा लगता है, वो न होकर बच्चों को स्कूल जाने में अच्छा लगे और वेरियस एक्टिविटीज के थ्रू ग्रेजुअली उन्हें एजुकेशन सिस्टम के अंदर एम्बाइब किया जाए. फिर हम मिडिल लेवल पे आते हैं तो हम लोगों ने जिस जमाने में पढ़ा था तो स्ट्रीम्स बहुत अर्ली डिफाइंड हो जाती थी 8th 9th और 10th में, वेदर यू बिलोंग टू आर्ट स्ट्रीम, साइंस, कॉमर्स एंड अदर. अब इस बार ये कहा गया है कि वो एक फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी रहेगी इस स्कीम में कि आप कोई भी दूसरा सब्जेक्ट ले सकते हैं। When you go further ahead at the level of the graduation, जो पहले 10+2 थी और 5+3+3 हो गई है, ग्रेजुएशन में क्या होता था कि there is a 3 years graduation, but unfortunately if a person is unable to give the final exam in the final year of its graduation, the entire 3 years got wasted. तो अब क्या किया गया है कि वो जो 3 years की डिग्री है उसको एक एक साल के वेरियस पार्ट्स में डिवाइड कर दिया गया। फर्स्ट ईयर, इफ यू लीव आफ्टर फर्स्ट ईयर, you will get a certificate. If you leave after second year, you will get a diploma. If you leave after third year, you will get a full-fledged degree. And if you go for 4 years degree program, you will get a research degree. In that case, if you are having the 4 years degree program, then for doing PG, you just need 1 more year. And if you have a normal degree, that is 3 years degree, for PG, you have to do for 2 years. तो अगर देखा जाए तो एक फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी कर दी है कि अगर किसी को बीच में कोई जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटी मिल गई तो वो स्विच ओवर कर सकता है और उसके पास कोई ना कोई सर्टिफिकेट है। ऐसा नहीं है कि वो 3 साल या तो वो सीधे थर्ड ईयर का फाइनल ईयर नहीं दे पाया तो सडनली उसकी क्वालिफिकेशन 12th पास। ये एक बड़ा चेंज किया गया है। और साथ ही साथ एक और बात भी की गई है, एक डिजिटल डाटा रिकॉर्ड होगा, यानी अगर आपने ग्रेजुएशन का फर्स्ट ईयर या सेकेंड ईयर करके छोड़ दिया तो दैट विल रिमेन इन योर रिकॉर्ड, that will be nationwide. From anywhere, any other university, you can go and at an appropriate time, whenever you want, you can complete your rest of the course. अभी तक ये होता था कि आपने जिस यूनिवर्सिटी से किया है, फिर आपने बीएससी यदि यहाँ से किया है तो फिर उसी यूनिवर्सिटी से आकर आप बीएससी करिए। तो ये 2 बड़े लेवल की फ्लेक्सिबिलिटीज देने की कोशिश की गई। थर्ड स्टेज ये है कि इसमें इंडियन लैंग्वेजेस को काफी इंपॉर्टेंस दी गई है और ये प्रयास किया गया है कि जो स्टूडेंट पढ़ाई करें एज फार एज पॉसिबल अपनी मदर टंग में करें तो वो ज्यादा बेटर होगा। तो लैंग्वेज पॉलिसी को कोशिश की गई है ओरिएंट करने की कि जो भारतीय भाषाएं हैं उनके अनुरूप चलने का प्रयास करें। क्योंकि देखिए एक बात मैं साफ कहना चाहता हूं, ये बात सही है कि इंग्लिश has been worldwide used and accepted, but you should also try to learn any country which wants to become great and lead the world. You cannot name a single country in the world which is leading with their fundamental education in the foreign language. आप 20th century में देख लीजिए, whether it was Germany, whether it was France, whether it was Russia, whether it was China, whether it is Israel. तो हम प्रैक्टिकलिटी के साथ साथ यह भी देखें, और मैं उसमें लिंग्विस्टिक एस्पेक्ट में ज्यादा डिटेल में न जाते हुए कि कौन सी लैंग्वेज साइंटिफिक है, कौन सी इफेक्टिव है, किसके पास लिटरेचर ज्यादा बेटर है, किसके पास, वो सब एक अलग चीज है। मैं तो सिर्फ ये कह रहा हूं कि जो एक नेचुरल कोहेरेंट एक्सप्रेशन आता है पर्टिकुलरली इन द रूरल एंड ट्राइबल एरियाज, दैट ओनली कम्स इन देयर मदर टंग, सो वी ट्राई टू इनकरेज दैट थिंग ऑल्सो। अब अगर हम एकदम टॉप लेवल पे आते हैं तो आज के जमाने में जो रिसर्च है वो इतनी मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी है, इफ यू डू नॉट प्रोवाइड द फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी। मैं एक एग्जांपल देना चाहता हूं। वन ऑफ माय colleague in my university who was very widely and highly educated, उन्होंने हार्वर्ड से पीएचडी किया था, क्लीवलैंड से पोस्ट डॉक किया था, एक कोर्स पेरिस में किया था, एक ऑस्ट्रेलिया की क्वींसलैंड यूनिवर्सिटी में किया था। तो वो इस बात के ऊपर रिसर्च कर रहे थे कि जो आर्म्स के अंदर किसी के एक्सीडेंट के बाद जो लगते हैं पार्ट्स, उसके मैकेनिकल एस्पेक्ट पे कर रहे थे। अब जब उसके मैकेनिकल एस्पेक्ट के ऊपर रिसर्च करनी है तो यू हैव टू हैव सर्टेन लेवल ऑफ नॉलेज ऑफ बायोलॉजी और फिजियोलॉजी। अब अगर आप ये कहेंगे साहब बायोलॉजी तो आप तो मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग में कर रहे हैं, तो बायोलॉजी तो बिल्कुल अलग सब्जेक्ट है। बट आज की डेट में आप देखें तो दोनों आपस में इंटर रिलेटेड है। सेकेंड एग्जाम्पल आई कैन गिव, इन दिस पीरियड ऑफ कोविड, if you want to develop a vaccine or you want to develop an immunity related medicine, then the immunity related things are mostly in Ayurveda and homeopathy. In the general allopathic medicine there is no immunity related thing. So if you want to switch over or include the Ayurvedic herbs in your research and try to have a clinical testing of that, then you have to have the fundamental knowledge of the Ayurveda. Even for reading the real text you have to have at least an elementary knowledge of the Sanskrit language, so that you can read directly the text. So for that, you should have a flexibility to switch over to another subject and then coordinate with both the subjects and go for the new research. तो मेरा सिर्फ ये मानना है कि प्री प्राइमरी से लेके मिडिल से लेके लिंग्विस्टिक एस्पेक्ट से लेके हायर लेवल रिसर्च तक, और गवर्नमेंट ने एक नेशनल रिसर्च फाउंडेशन है जिसमें कई हजार करोड़ रुपए गवर्नमेंट डालेगी जस्ट इन ऑर्डर टू इंश्योर, और इसके अलावा जो टॉप की 100 यूनिवर्सिटीज होंगी उनको फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी दी जाएगी कि फॉरेन यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ कोलैबोरेशन करें. सो वी आल्सो वांट टू हैव अ प्रॉपर नेटवर्क एंड एफिकेसी एट द ग्लोबल लेवल. तो मैंने सिर्फ ये कहने की ये प्रयास किया कि इस एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में रीजनल लैंग्वेज से लेकर ग्लोबल एस्पिरेशन तक, इनिशियल प्ले स्कूल से लेके मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी रिसर्च तक, और रिसर्च फाउंडेशन के लिए रिसोर्सेज और मनी इंश्योर करने तक सारे प्रकार की व्यवस्थाएं की गई हैं. और अंत में मैं सिर्फ ये कहना चाहूंगा, देखिए हम दुनिया में एक इकलौते देश थे जहां दुनिया से सारे लोग पढ़ने आते थे, चाहे चाइना से आते थे, चाहे ईरान से आते थे, चाहे अरब से आते थे. और जब हम ये कहते हैं कि हम विश्व गुरु थे, तो उसके लिए हमारे धर्मशास्त्रों में लिखा है कि एतद् देशे प्रसूतस्य सकाशादग्र जन्मना स्व स्व चरित्रम शिक्षेरन पृथ्व्याम सर्वमानव. इसका मतलब है दिस वाज अ कंट्री in which the people used to come from all over the world to get the education and enrich their character also and get inspired. और finally मैं word कहना चाहूंगा, most of the country want to become the superpower of the world. We do not want to become the superpower of the world. हम सुपर पावर नहीं बनना चाहते because power dominates, but we want to motivate the world and motivation can come only through education. तो इसलिए हम जगत गुरु बनना चाहते हैं. गुरु प्रेरणा देता है, ताकतवर व्यक्ति दबाता है, और उसका रास्ता इस नई एजुकेशन पॉलिसी से निकलेगा जिसके मल्टीपल डायमेंशंस हैं. मैंने इस संक्षिप्त समय में उस पर थोड़ा प्रकाश डालने का प्रयास किया है. धन्यवाद. नमस्कार.
Thank you so much, sir, for those very inspiring words. We know that you have a hard stop and you've specially taken out time for this session. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much.
राजीव जी, मुझे 7 बजे जाना है, क्षमा करिएगा, मैं निकलता.
You're welcome.
Okay, sir. So with that, I would like to welcome our next guest, Shri Sujit Kumar, Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, Odisha, BJD. Sujit Kumar ji is an MP representing the state of Odisha at Rajya Sabha. He hails from the district of Kalahandi, Odisha, and is affiliated to Biju Janata Dal. He has an engineering degree from University College of Engineering, UCE, Barla, MBA from Oxford Set School of Business, MBA from Harvard Kennedy School, and has worked with Infosys and World Economic Forum. We welcome you, sir. I would request you to please address the audience on the vision note.
So we are waiting for Sujit ji to get his line corrected. Okay, while that happens, Garima, let's continue.
Yes, I think so. We'll join in back. I would now like to welcome Professor Rajiv Gowda, former Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, and ex-IIM Bangalore professor. Professor Rajiv Gowda is a former Member of Parliament from Karnataka, heads AICC Research, and has served as a faculty at IIM Bangalore. He's an alumnus of Wharton and University of California, Berkeley. We welcome you, sir. I would request you to first address the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here discussing our shared visions of what the world of education can possibly look like. And the Internet and Mobile Association is an appropriate organization to host this because Internet and mobile are platforms that have the potential to transform the Indian education landscape. So when you think about what that vision might possibly be, think about the fact that we've had tremendous inequality of access all these years. And if we don't remedy that today, we are going to essentially sacrifice the futures of so many youngsters. And India is one of the most youthful countries in the world. Every year that we delay we are really missing out on achieving the full potential, that unique demographic dividend that is there waiting for us, if we are able to seize the opportunity. And so think about what all dimensions we need to pay attention to. These technologies have the ability, if we put in the other investments, to help us bridge digital divides, to be able to ensure that every child, every student in any corner of India will be able to access the same quality resources, will be able to engage with technology to open their minds to the world's knowledge. And many times when I used to give speeches in colleges, people would say, "Sir, you're from IIM or Wharton, and we don't have that much access to resources." And I'd say, "Sorry, boss, there is the internet. It opens the world to you. So think about how you can actually tap into that." And that's really the challenge before us. How do we take those resources that are out there, build a bridge so that every single person can access it? And by that, I also mean teachers who may want to, transform the way they teach, integrate materials that are taken from across the world, bring in the lessons and lesson plans of the best teachers out there, and find a way to change the nature of how we engage with education from the old rote learning to something that sparks our imagination and creativity. So that's one dimension. Another dimension, of course, is that, just like Sudhanshuji was talking about, the ability to continue education, I think I also describe myself as a continual student. And this ability to continuously learn is something that the platform's technology enables, and we need to facilitate this so that not only those who dropped out, but those who are eager to stay abreast and to get ahead, to change the way they have approached the world and the dimensions of that, the educational careers and trajectories, all of these are going to be something that is enabled by technology. Now, there are certain other visions that come about. Sudhanshu earlier was talking about multiple languages and mother tongues. Actually, we need to be imaginative and creative and find multidimensional, technological approaches to making languages and cultures come alive. Many of us are masters of English and the Western world, but only when I engaged with Hindi poetry and literature did it resonate in my heart. Okay. Similarly, we're missing out on so much of the wealth and culture that exists in our own country, of which we are only touching on the surface through a few translations here or there. Technology has the ability to make India come together and allow each and every one of us to celebrate what everyone else is contributing and nurturing in their own cultural domains. But beyond that, I was a professor at IIM and the United States for a long time. I have won competitions to get research grants from the National Science Foundation in the US, etc. So we basically need to create the environment that allows every professor, every teacher in this country to think about going out there and becoming an active researcher. People often tell me again that, "Oh, sir, what can we do? We're not in the right environment," or something. And I say the world is just filled with research topics out there. And you just have to have the right mindset. And one of the things that a National Research Foundation can do, which is build bridges between mentors, people who are adept at research, who are very productive, who can guide faculty everywhere else, so that we are able to build a whole cadre of researchers and innovators. And I can assure you that in a few years' time, if we seize this opportunity, we will be able to generate patents and intellectual property of the kind that we've never aspired to do so before. And beyond that, many, many years ago, 15 years ago, as a matter of fact, I had written an article on the same theme, which was called Vishwavidyalaya. I said that, the word Vishwavidyalaya, which means university, can be translated literally to, the knowledge hub of the world. And that should be the vision that we have for India. All of us, have aspired to go abroad and study in the world's best universities. I've been lucky to be able to do that. And so like Ghanshyam Tiwari, Sujit Kumar are both Harvard products. Okay, so that's the kind of universities that we've seen attract the best from the world's distant shores. But it's time we started to reverse that process, or to compete with the Harvards and the Oxfords and turn our institutions into, open our doors and ensure that we provide the opportunities for faculty and students from around the world to come to India and to partake of knowledge and diversity that India can offer, the market opportunities that really hone a business student's and a policy student's understanding. And essentially, we need to say that, look, we actually provide knowledge and education in English at a fraction of the cost of the rest of the world. So therefore, we have the capacity to break that model of high cost, inaccessible education and actually democratize the opportunities that are available, not just to the people within India, but to people everywhere, thanks to the internet and mobile telephony. So that would be sort of the biggest vision that I would want to share, that we've got to aspire to think of India as a knowledge hub of the world, that technology now makes it possible. It makes it possible for us to also tap into that extraordinary talent in the diaspora, which we have always considered to be a brain drain. Well, we can regain those brains by building bridges, by reaching out and finding ways to tap into that knowledge and commitment to our country. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to taking these ideas to action, to translate them into reality in our own, in the next decade or so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think Sujit sir is still facing some problems, so I would like to introduce you to our next guest, a very special guest, Shri Ghanshyam Tiwari, member Samajwadi Party, founder Good Ed Technologies. Ghanshyam Tiwari sir is co-chair of IAMAI EduTech Committee, a member of the EduTech 2020 Conference Advisory Board, and founder of Parliamentarians with Innovators as well as Good Ed Technologies. He also serves as the national spokesperson of SP and was a candidate for the parliamentary elections from Bihar in 2019. We welcome you, sir. Thank you, sir. I would request you to please address the audience.
Thank you so much, Garima, and thank you so much to IMAI, every attendee who has from the morning till this time extensively presented their work, their ideas, their aspirations, and a message of positivity towards where India can move in education. I do believe that we would be able to conclude this discussion with a vision note from Sujit ji also. But while he is still trying to figure out the internet glitch on his side, I would want to add my 2 cents and a sense of vision. So I see Sujit Kumar ji here. So can I pause, Garima, and invite, we can invite him, and then I can come back into the conversation.
Hello? Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Yes. So we can go back to Sujit Kumar ji, and then I can come back thereafter.
Yeah. Ghanshyam, do you want me to speak?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Ghanshyam.
Garima would introduce you. She introduced you earlier also, so you can start speaking.
No, again, one of those technical glitches. We are talking about.
No problem, sir. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing and hosting this webinar or EdTech conference on a topic which has assumed great significance in the context of COVID-19 and online classes, and also in the context of the new education policy after 34 years. More on the issue of digital inclusion and on the for digital learning accessible and affordable to millions of students in rural India where I come from. I come from a district called Kalahandi in Odisha, which is fairly rural. For me, digital learning is not about technology, not about content, because we have the best content in the world. We have for-profit, non-profit entities offering content. Ghanshyam, you have yourself started a fairly successful startup, GoodEd, which is offering content. There are dozens of platforms, online platforms. But I think what is rather more critical is the intent, the resources and the last mile connectivity. Uh, this is where I think the disconnect, the gap to, to make education digitally available to all our students, and the reality of millions of students not having access to this education because they do not have the resources, they do not have the last mile connectivity. Right? In fact, in my 0 hour intervention in the parliament last week, I raised an issue which has agitated and perturbed my district and neighboring districts of Odisha. BSNL has decided to withdraw cellular services. Can you imagine? BSNL in July came up with a notification that because of revenue loss and because of commercial ability, it is withdrawn cellular from Kalahandi and other rural districts, and it happens to be the only provider. So can development be a hostage to only commercial considerations? Can development be only about profit and loss? What will happen? I come from the district headquarter town, which has Geo towers, but there are at least 150 panchayats in my district alone where there is no Geo, no Airtel, no Idea, no Vodafone, nothing. It's only BSNL. And if BSNL withdraws, imagine the plight of people, not to mention the plight of the students, right? So my vision, as a technocrat myself, I'm an engineer, electronics engineer by training. So my vision as a technocrat is to get technology to educate, empower, enable the students from rural area. My vision as a startup investor is to support entrepreneurs and startups who are building products and solutions for rural India. And my vision as a policy maker now, as a member of parliament, is to design policies and help implement policies which will take this vision of digital learning, this vision of digital India to two-thirds of our students residing in rural India. I'd like to share two specific examples from Odisha, uh, which are great examples of digital inclusion and digital connectivity in the present COVID times. One is realizing that not all panchayats, not all villages, not all parts of Odisha can be connected through broadband during this crisis and at such a short notice. We leverage the community radio stations. So we have a very strong network of CRS, community radio stations across Odisha. So we reached out to them. We asked them to develop contents for the primary school students and for the middle school students, for high schools. The state government deputed teachers to work with the CRS. So most of the CRS are managed by non-profit. So we deputed teachers to work with the CRS and help them develop jingles, help them develop stories, help them develop meaningful content in local dialect, in local language, because Odia is spoken by largely by people residing in coastal Odisha, but large section of Odisha doesn't speak the official Odia because we have a large tribal population which speaks the tribal dialects. We have people in Western Odisha who speak a separate dialect, which is a mix of Chhattisgarhi and Odia. So this has been such a successful experiment, and places which are not covered by the antenna of the CRS, we have volunteers taking this content in their mobile phones and reaching out to the tribal students. The second example which I would like to share from Odisha is regarding a project called eVidya. Now it sounds very innocuous, but the beauty of this initiative, which again was started after COVID, after the COVID lockdown, is we have about 5,000 teachers, government teachers, visiting about 23,000 villages, most of which are in the tribal areas of Odisha, carrying with them the content in mobile phone, in hard disks, and playing it out to a group of small students in the villages. Because these are the villages which do not have the connectivity, net connectivity. These are the villages where students, either because of economic reasons or because of infrastructure, are unable to connect to the external world through internet. So since they're unable to access the content, we reached out to them, and today, I'm so proud to say that about 5 lakh students are connected through this very simple intervention to digital learning. Now, I'm sorry that these are interventions which are not very high tech, but these are very very simple interventions, which to my view projects the intention, projects the empathy, and is what I perceive to be the first step towards the digital inclusion and digital India. So we are talking about 6% of India's GDP to be spent on education in the new education policy. Today we are at 3.2. So I mean, the intent is great. I was listening to Sudhanshu ji, and then I got disconnected. And the education policy, of course, is a very very forward-looking policy because it gives flexibility to students. It encourages interdisciplinary learning. It encourages learning in mother tongue, in one's own mother tongue. And what could be more heartening for someone like me who studied, in a government school for first 18 years of my life, to know that the stress is on learning through one's own mother tongue, and the new education policy. But I really hope that the policy translates into the requisite uh, inclusion, the requisite accessibility for millions of students, who are residing in small towns, in semi-urban, in small villages, in semi-urban towns, and I think that would be the biggest necessity or biggest challenge of EdTech. So I think I'll stop with that, Ghanshyam, and then I'll be happy to come back later.
Sure. Thank you, Sujit. Garib, with your permission, I will continue the
Thank you.
Built upon what Dr. Trivedi spoke about and what Professor Rajiv Gowda spoke about and what Sujit spoke about. Three very inspiring leaders from our parliament who, both from their knowledge as well as work, continue to drive the vision for India, both at their state level as well as at a national level. I think for all the conversation that has happened on education all day, and I've gone through the videos of many conversations, participated, or at least listened to several conversations. It is very valuable to be able to speak in a positive light and in a vision oriented manner about where we stand towards the next stage of education in India. But I think I would want to take a break or departure from that model. And as a young dreamer for India towards education, I want to point to a very massive question that has been missed as we look at the vision for education. And it is often missed because the life experience of the founders, the investors, the people who are driving the new technology in education, for some reason has not covered the more than 6 lakh villages that exist in India, the more than 8,000 towns that exist, cities that exist in India. And I think I would want to remind one of the articles that appeared in the Washington Post today with a headline that in India, engineers and MBAs are turning to manual labor to survive the economic crash. And the reason I want to say that is the education system that I grew up into and became an entrepreneur and went to various great colleges from NIT Surathkal to IIM Bangalore to Kellogg and Harvard. For most people in the country has become an expensive road to nowhere. And the reason I say expensive road to nowhere, to be able to claim that, I looked at what are the success rates in lottery tickets across the world. And you compare that, to the proposition that for every government job that comes out in India, there have been at least 200 applicants. So we had created a system where a student started at age 3 in the kindergarten system, and by the time the student graduated at the age of 18 with 16 years of education or 15 years of education, and then 4 years of, or 3 to 4 years of undergrad education, maybe 2 years of postgraduate education. The communication was toward after the end of this marathon that was built by educators and policymakers in the country, the student will have a job. And all the edtech that we have created so far, be it the test prep company that I work towards, or be it test prep for post school, post college for government jobs, all the education that we have created in terms of products, a bulk of it cater to the same runway of education that was created, which remains an expensive road to run to nowhere. And when we look at that and look at the things that we did not discuss in the conference today, the parliament was told that more than 1 crore migrants traveled back to their home districts. A lot of them were employed. They were a product of our education system. Some dropped out in grade 10. Some went on to finish their undergrad and as Washington Post reports, that are back in their villages and working as laborers. So it is important, as we think about the vision ahead, it is important to realize what went wrong. Why are we become a country where millions of people are just taking exams from age 18 to 35, and even after all that marathon effort, they are not able to get jobs. And as a result, what needs to change as we think about this new education policy that is taking a leap ahead? I think what needs to change is to set out the vision of education from the mission of education. And I think the mission of education today is far more important. The mission of education is, as in the morning, our keynote speaker, Mohandas Pai, spoke. He spoke as a cursory glance to the fact that in Bihar, 13% people join the college education. If you look at women in Bihar, girls in Bihar, less than 5% would join the college education. So we are talking about an education system, 270 million students in school, 1.4 million schools that we have. These are numbers that came up in today's discussions. We're talking about an education system that has nearly 1,000 universities, nearly 40,000 colleges, and all this leading to a situation where for each job there are 200 people. Our engineers are, in some cases, are working as laborers. 1 crore people have to walk back because a crisis has struck. And we have our villages, towns where their education, the formal education I'm talking about, not the skill, is not directly applicable to improvement of quality of life. So from that perspective, I think the mission of education at one level, yes, there are these vision of education that education would make each of us a better individual, a better citizen. Collectively, it will make our country a knowledge superpower. It will be a great export from India to the world. It can also make us a great country of super soft power, because every Indian teacher trained here can teach hundreds of children in Africa, in many other places at low cost, better quality. Yes, those are all visionary elements of education. But the mission of education has to be that each of us, this new generation that graduates from our education system, has to own their communities, their towns, their villages, with the knowledge that they acquire. If their knowledge, or if our knowledge cannot enable us to own and improve the quality of life in our towns and villages, then how will that knowledge help us? No matter how technologically advanced that knowledge is, no matter how big our vision is to become the global superpower of knowledge. Second, that if that knowledge does not incorporate the realities of our life, be it our languages, be it the culture, be it the purpose of education. In Bihar, when I used to give guest lectures to government schools, high schools, I saw two things. One was a pandemic, before this pandemic. That is the inferiority complex, that if I don't know proper English, I will not be a good student. And that has created an inferiority complex among vast numbers of students in villages and towns, who think that just because they don't know English, they are not the good student in the eye of the world. Second is the complete disconnect that a degree-driven education had created from the local life. Farmers would tell me that education is destroying our youth. The reason they would say that is saying that my child or my grandson, granddaughter acquires a BSc, BE degree and is no more interested in owning that farm, improving my village, is disinterested in the life of the village entirely. So it is important that at least in the mission mode, a purpose of education must be at a country level to be able to tangibly improve or to make our students capable so with their knowledge, so that they are able to tangibly improve the quality of life in their family and the quality of life of their village and the quality of life of their town. We can be the best students scoring 99% marks in biology, even qualifying and topping NEET exam. But if we don't know the birds, the plants in our town and a village, we will not have the sense of ownership towards them. And as a result, we will always chase a mirage that the job that I require does not exist in my village and town. So I'm not doing anything to improve my village and town with my quality of knowledge. And the job that exists has too many applicants. And then there is this aspiration for a global job, which in any way will shift because of COVID and the new form of globalization that will happen. So summing up, I think my vision of education does not differ from everything that our entrepreneurs, our investors, our great decacons and unicorns are talking about. But I think my mission of education today is not finding enough pioneers, because that mission believes that education must give you knowledge or give us knowledge to tangibly improve the quality of life around us, both in terms of emotional pride towards owning that society, as well as using the knowledge, technology to improve quality of life in that society. And it is that mission we need to have more stakeholders in our country to build that mission, because India will not progress and become a global superpower just on the back of 500 edtech companies and 20, 30 metro and metro-like cities. It will only become a superpower if the quality of life in our towns and villages is better, and it is scientifically integrated to continuous improvements, as well as there's an aspiration to make those towns and villages better through knowledge, through education. And it is that mission that I want to be my note towards what India needs to do or achieve in terms of education. We should look towards a future where if a similar pandemic strikes in 20 years from now, 1 crore people should not walk back home without with a sense of poverty, with a sense of desperation, and reaching there, not finding a job, not finding the dignity of a livelihood. And not to say that nearly 30,000 people died in transit. So my vision of education is this mission, that education should locally empower people before we chase global dreams. Or if we chase global dreams, it should not leave behind the local aspirations with respect to education. So with that, I conclude my note. I would invite questions if anyone has any questions. I know that I didn't request Professor Gowda's permission or Sujit Kumarji's permission for questions, but I'm sure that they will be able to share their experiences if there are any questions that emerge from the audience. So, Garima, if there are questions, we'll take it, or I invite you to take over to conclude the discussion.
Yes, sir. There are or two, I think, a few questions.
Sure. So from the chat, I read one question, which is there any change that you have seen post-pandemic in education policy and the way ahead? I invite Professor Gowda and then Sujit Kumarji to speak about that in a even broader sense, that what does the new normal look like from education, job, livelihood, um, based on both the new education policy and technology, what lies out there. For example, the fact that 50% of students are unable to access online classes, that creates a possibility of illiteracy. At one end, we will have people who are progressing very fast. At another end, we will have people who are who were already behind and are now falling off the bus. So it will be good to seek your perspective on this, Mr. Gowda.
Yeah, basically, we've always been concerned about inequality in our society. And inequality begins at a very young age, depending on the kind of schools that your parents put you into. And, your life's trajectory it significantly depends on that. And what the pandemic and the lockdown showed us was that that stark reality is magnified when technology comes into play, because only small sections of India were able to continue their education in a seamless manner. Everyone else was essentially left out. So that is something that provides us both, it's a problem, but it's also an opportunity for us to find ways to correct that. And that's what technology can help us do. Simultaneously, there is the other issue of the benefit from the pandemic, which is people getting comfortable with the idea of using technology. Technology has not been something new in the context of education, but fundamentally we have not been willing to embrace it in a significant way. And now teachers have been forced to learn how to connect and keep students engaged and the whole exercise. And so this, even in political parties, we've learned to do, internal national level meetings all online. So basically, the positive is that people are now beginning to embrace technology. So between these two angles, there is the building block towards the more technology-enabled educational future, which will be inclusive, which will be transformative. So that's where I think we would be going if we learn the lessons right.
Sujit Kumarji?
Yeah, Gansam, I completely echo what Professor Gowda was saying. On the positive note, you have people becoming more comfortable with technology, as Professor Gowda was just pointing out. But on the other hand, you have a huge gap between the digital have and the digital have not, which is only getting amplified. People will only get comfortable with technology if they have access to technology in the first place. If they have access to internet, if they have that last mile connectivity, which unfortunately is not the case for the vast majority of India, right? So I really hope that this provides an opportunity and motivation to the government to expedite the BharatNet project. The idea of digital India, e-Kranti, where wants to connect every single village, every single panchayat of the country. But I think we are nowhere near that goal, which is what is a big frustration for me. So, if God forbid, if this lockdown extends for another year or so, just imagine the number of students in rural India who are going to be left behind probably forever. My biggest fear, and I really hope that the government seriously uh, takes a very serious and urgent view about this and does something about it.
Sure. Thank you so much, Professor Gowda and Sujit Kumarji. There's one final question. I will take that, and with that, we'll conclude. The final question is about that at a time when countless teachers are losing their jobs and reskilling is not a choice but an imperative, how do we encounter the lag in reskilling arising from economic and social disparity? I think this is a very important question across board, with people losing jobs, and many of them will not be able to go back to their jobs. And it is at times like this the government has to be innovative and think about market-linked methods such as skilling vouchers that they are able to, or even education vouchers that they are able to provide with a timeline of next 2-3 years, that those who lose their jobs or their jobs become unviable due to pandemic, right, are able to reach another option where they are able to rescale for courses that may be supported or subsidized by government. And as a result, it leverages the demand in the honest sense, while government provides for the demand rather than suggesting what they should be doing. With that, I want to sincerely thank Professor Rajiv Gowda and Sujit Kumarji and Garima for being an excellent host to our session. And IMAI. Also want to thank
you.
Sudhanshu Trivedi. I think it is great to be able to speak about a future vision for India in a bipartisan manner, with a lens of grassroots as well as aspiration for the sky, to make India a knowledge superpower and a knowledge leader in true sense. So with that, I want to thank everyone at IMAI and everyone who has watched this conversation. And I hope that collectively, when next year we do this summit, we will have a lot more case studies to discuss on how we transformed education and skilling landscape in India in the face of this devastating pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ghanshyam sir. Thank you, Mr. Gowda. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. With that, we come to the end of our conference. It is now time for us to sign off at EduTech 2020 with the promise of yet another ambitious conference coming up with IMAI very soon. Thank you so much.